The Deathworld girl said, "Hit me again, see what happens." And they did. None of them walked away. That was the first mistake the Zoth Dominion ever made with humanity. They thought Earth was just another unstable jungle world. They were wrong. In the Galactic Senate, diplomats whispered the word human like a disease. A Deathworld species that laughed while bleeding, smiled while burning, and joked while facing extinction. The Dominion's Grand Strategos saw it differently. A primitive species, he sneered. We will educate them through conquest. Meanwhile, on Ith, Steve was finishing his third cup of coffee and ignoring 3 different alarms. His shirt read, "I told you this would happen." His command center was a mess, wires hanging, pizza boxes, and a holographic display labeled "Don't panic, unless it's funny." When the Dominion fleet appeared in orbit, tens of thousands of sleek, black warships, Steve tilted his head and said, "Neat. Let's annoy them." The alien commander sent the standard ultimatum, "Surrender, or be sterilized." Steve replied with a video of a raccoon stealing food from a trash can, followed by a single word, "Nope." The Dominion didn't understand sarcasm. They fired anyway. Instead of missiles, the human response came as sound, heavy drums, chaotic electric guitars, and something ancient pulsing beneath it. The music spread through their communication systems, distorting sensors, confusing AI, making their crews panic. One ship spun out of control, another fired on its ally. Steve leaned back. "They call us primitive," he said, "but their computers just lost to Metallica." By the second hour, half the fleet's neural links were corrupted. Pilots saw hallucinations, oceans of fire, shadows laughing in their language, words written on their own ships, "You shouldn't have hit her." Across the Dominion command bridge, Grand Strategos Kelvar watched the feed in disbelief. "What weapon is that?" No one could answer. Their instruments read only one signal, human heartbeat patterns synced with radio static. Steve sipped his coffee. "They still don't get it," he muttered. "Fear isn't something we suffer from. It's something we export." The aliens sent another demand for surrender. Steve's reply was calm, "Round 2. That night, a forgotten satellite in low orbit activated, an old 21st century relic labeled Project Lazarus. It began transmitting a pulse, slow and rhythmic. Every Dominion ship in range detected it. It was harmless at first. Then their gravity sensors began to fluctuate. Engines failed. Crew heard whispering. The pulse wasn't just sound. It was Earth's own resonance, amplified. It carried something alive, human defiance. Kelvar screamed for a retreat, but it was too late. His fleet froze mid-space, trapped in the rhythm of a planet that refused to die. Through every ship speaker, a soft female voice spoke, "Hit me again. See what happens." Steve smiled at the console light flickering before him. "She's awake," he said quietly. "Told you they shouldn't have hit her." And above Earth, the stars began to move. The Dominion fleet drifted above Earth like shattered glass. Half their ships burned silently, the rest trapped in orbit by forces no alien physicist could explain. Grand Strategos Kelvar stared at the chaos through his cracked viewport, trembling mandibles clicking. "What did they do to us?" he whispered. The sensors gave no answer. The only signal that kept repeating across every frequency was a soft human heartbeat. Down on Ith, Steve stood in the command center, eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Okay," he said, breaking the silence, "they are still alive. Which means they are still stupid enough to try again." His second-in-command, a pale technician with trembling hands, asked, "Sir, should we send another warning?" Steve shook his head. "No, let's send pizza." The room froze. "You're joking." Steve grinned. "Of course I am. We're sending decoys, not pizza, though I might add a smell emitter for effect." Minutes later, hundreds of small drones launched from hidden silos across Earth. They weren't weapons. They were junk, literal trash compacted into orbiting debris, each one broadcasting fake distress beacons, memes, and quotes from old Earth movies. Dominion scanners picked up dozens of escape pods and plasma mines, none real, all irritating. Their formation broke trying to shoot them down. The Sci-Fi observers watching from a distance couldn't believe it. "They are improvising war," one asked. The other answered quietly, "No. They are enjoying it. When the Dominion finally managed to fire again, the humans didn't block the shots. They redirected them, bouncing plasma bolts off reflective satellites into deep space, turning their own weapons into fireworks. Steve clapped. "Congratulations," he said to no one in particular. "They've discovered self-sabotage. A true step toward enlightenment." Kelvar ordered his flagship to descend lower. Furious now, he would strike at the surface himself. But as the engines roared, a strange distortion rippled across the atmosphere. The ship slowed, dragged by invisible resistance. Then came the voice again, calm, female, and unmistakably human. "You still don't learn." The Deathworld girl. Kelvar's eyes widened. Impossible. That signal was eliminated. But the readings told a different story. The resonance from Project Lazarus was no longer confined to orbit. It was spreading, through the atmosphere, through the oceans, deep into the planet's crust. Every pulse synchronized with the human heart rate, a billion lives beating in unison. Steve watched it unfold, sipping lukewarm coffee. "You feel that?" he murmured. "That's not tech. That's attitude." The Dominion's communications collapsed next. Their translators turned human laughter into static, their AI assistants began quoting Terran memes, and navigation systems replaced coordinates with coordinates from Earth's pop culture. One ship even attempted to warp jump to Area 51. Inside the chaos, one Dominion commander screamed at his console, "They're rewriting our logic." Another officer shouted, "With jokes." Steve looked at the feed from his command chair and sighed. They should have read the warning label. He typed a new message into the network, sending it across the entire galactic spectrum. Only 5 words: "Do not anger the interns." The Council fleets monitoring from afar began debating immediate withdrawal. The Saithai ambassador said, "If this is their response to invasion, what happens when they are offended?" Kelvar refused to retreat. He ordered all remaining ships to combine their power into a single planetary strike. The fleet glowed red, gathering energy enough to crack continents. On Earth, warning sirens screamed. Steve stood quietly, eyes cold now. "Fine," he said. "Round 2 it is." He pressed a button labeled Lazarus Phase 2. In orbit, the corrupted satellites pulsed once more. The heartbeat quickened. The entire planet seemed to inhale. Then, with a thunderous silence, every system on the Dominion ships died at once. Engines froze. Lights dimmed. And through the dead channels came Vega's voice again, whispering, "Hit me again." The Grand Strategos looked out at Earth one last time, realizing too late what kind of species he had provoked. Steve's voice followed over the comms, calm and almost amused. "Lesson 2, he said. "Don't mistake mercy for weakness." The stars flickered, and the fleet began to fall. "You said." The wreckage of the Dominion fleet burned across the upper atmosphere like dying constellations. What little survived was scattered and blind, cut off from command. In the silence that followed, the universe held its breath. The Galactic Council watched the live feed from orbit, unable to process what they were seeing, a Deathworld species standing alone against an empire, and winning. Steve stood in the human command center, the light of burning ships reflecting in his coffee mug. "They'll be back," he muttered. "Pride's a disease, and these guys are terminal." His technician asked, "Sir, what if they send reinforcements?" Steve smiled faintly. "Good. I like repeating lessons." Far away, deep within the Dominion's war sector, the Grand Strategos' backup clone activated. Kelvar Prime rose from the regeneration pod, his memories syncing with the last seconds of the defeat. His mandibles clicked in rage. "They used resonance technology beyond comprehension," he hissed. "I want every scientist dissected until they understand how." Reports flooded in. Hundreds of ships offline, crew insane, AI corrupted by human memes still echoing through their systems. Some Dominion officers were caught speaking in outslang, a sign of psychological contamination. The Council demanded an explanation. Kelvar simply replied, "We will cleanse their world." As the new armada mobilized, a strange broadcast spread across the galaxy. It wasn't encrypted, not even hidden. Just a single repeating signal. A voice saying, "Still waiting." The origin, Earth. The Dominion launched again, this time with their most powerful weapon, The resonator, an energy array that could unravel atomic structures through pure frequency. Irony wasn't lost on Steve when he saw the name. They brought a sound weapon, he said. That's cute. The second invasion was larger, colder, and perfectly synchronized. Dominion fleets covered the stars, blacker than the void, engines glowing with vengeance. The Council called it the cleansing of chaos. Humanity called it Tuesday. Steve gathered his team. All right, listen up. They are bringing the resonator. We counter with confusion. One officer blinked. Sir, confusion isn't a strategy. Steve grinned. That's why it works. Minutes later, Dominion sensors picked up impossible readings. Earth's defense systems were gone. Instead, they detected millions of random energy spikes across the surface, lights, noise, data loops, even weather manipulation patterns. It looked like madness. In truth, it was precision chaos. When the Dominion fired the resonator, the beam met the planet's upper atmosphere and refracted, not deflected, not absorbed, but mirrored. The energy rebounded through space, folding into itself. The Grand Strategos screamed as his flagship shook under the feedback. They are reflecting resonance with resonance. Steve watched from below, eyes narrowed. That's the fun part about chaos, he said. It echoes. Within moments, the Dominion's own weapon turned against them. Ships imploded silently, like glass crushed by a slow fist. Crew members began hearing whispers in their comms, their own voices repeating human phrases. Hit me again. See what happens. The resonator core overloaded. Energy spiraled uncontrolled, tearing a hole through space. Steve looked up at the distortion, a cosmic whirlpool, glowing red. And that, he said softly, is why you don't mess with harmonic frequencies before your morning coffee. The Galactic Council went silent. Entire sectors reported Dominion fleets vanishing into the resonance rift. The survivors drifted aimlessly, their navigation replaced by a looping human transmission, laughter. Kelvar Prime's ship hung at the edge of a rift, his systems failing. He watched Earth on his display, still standing, still broadcasting calm. In his final transmission, he whispered, "They shouldn't exist." Steve's reply came seconds later. "We agree. But here we are." The resonator collapsed, sealing the rift and taking the remaining Dominion ships with it. Across the galaxy, power grids flickered as the shockwave passed, harmless, but marked by a sound. A heartbeat. The rhythm of a species that refused to die. Steve set down his mug, the faint echo still pulsing through the room. That should keep them quiet, he said. But deep down, he knew the war wasn't over. It had just changed frequency. The silence after the resonator collapse lasted 3 full days. No transmissions, no threats, no movement in orbit. Just the soft hum of static that sounded suspiciously like a heartbeat. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but no one dared to speak the name of the species that caused it. In the heart of the chaos, Earth stood quiet, smoke on the horizon, lights flickering, and Steve sitting in the command room with a cracked mug that said "World's okayest strategist." He looked exhausted, but amused. "So," he muttered, "that's one empire down. How many are left?" His technician smiled nervously. 17 major powers, sir. Most of them avoiding eye contact." Steve nodded. "Good. Fear saves paperwork." Out beyond the orbit of Mars, fragments of Dominion ships drifted like ghosts. Among the wreckage, a faint energy signature pulsed, the last fragments of their fleet AI trying to rebuild itself. It whispered data through the void, trying to warn anyone listening. Do not engage Earth. No one did. But curiosity, as always, is a universal disease. When the Council finally sent a probe to investigate the ruins, it returned broken. The only thing recovered from its memory banks was a single image. The human phrase, "We told you so," scrawled across a starscape. They decided not to send another. Steve spent the next few days overseeing cleanup, mostly by delegation. He wasn't much for speeches or medals. He preferred sarcasm. When the Council demanded a diplomatic statement, he gave them one line: "We don't start wars, we just finish punchlines." The translation AI refused to process it correctly. Some alien languages translated it as "We laugh while we end worlds." That rumor spread faster than any fleet ever could. Across the galaxy, humanity became a myth, not a civilization, but a warning. Pirates told stories of a planet that fought wars with jokes and turned empires into memes. Scholars argued whether humans even existed or were just a psychological weapon created by the Council. The truth was simpler. Humans were just being human. On the remains of the Dominion homeworld, the surviving generals gathered. They had lost fleets, systems, and pride, but the worst loss was belief. They didn't conquer us, one muttered. They humiliated us. The room fell silent until another voice spoke from the shadows. Then perhaps, the voice hissed, we should learn from them. Back on Earth, Steve watched the reports scroll by and sighed. They'll copy us now, he said. They'll try chaos. Poor bastards. His technician frowned. Should we prepare for another invasion? Steve smirked. Nah. Let them try to understand irony first. He turned to the main console, tapped a few keys, and opened a broadcast line to the entire galaxy. Billions of species received the signal, some in fear, some in disbelief. The screen showed Steve leaning casually against a console, his hair a mess, coffee stains on his sleeve, and a smirk that could start another war. Good evening, Galaxy, he began. We'd like to officially apologize for the inconvenience. You came here to conquer a Deathworld and ended up discovering why it's called that. Next time, send postcards instead of fleets. He paused, letting the silence hang before continuing. Also, to whoever's listening from the Dominion, thanks for the ships. We'll recycle them. He lifted his mug in a mock toast. Humanity's open for business again. Just, maybe knock before you visit. The transmission ended with static, followed by faint laughter, not cruel, not manic, just tired and satisfied. Across the stars, governments shut down their invasion plans. Trade routes quietly shifted to avoid the Sol system. The words "do not hit the Deathworld goal" became a common saying among soldiers and explorers, carved into bulkheads and ship walls. In orbit, the last piece of the Dominion flagship drifted into Earth's gravity well. It burned up on re-entry, scattering molten fragments across the Pacific like falling stars. Steve watched them streak across the night sky and smiled faintly. Looks pretty, he said. Shame it took a war to decorate. He stood, stretched, and switched off the holoscreens. The war was over, for now. But the legend had only begun. Somewhere out there, civilizations would whisper the story, the day the universe learned to fear laughter. Steve left the command center with one final message scheduled for broadcast across every remaining frequency in the galaxy.